Good morning, students. Today's class we are going to discuss about the basics of operating system, which is covered in the unit 1. So what is an operating system? Operating system is a powerful and usually extensive program that controls and manages the hardware and other software on a computer. All computers and computer-like devices require operating system, including our laptop, tablet, desktop, smartphone, smartwatch and router. So what is the main role of the operating system? So before that we will discuss examples of operating system. So that is the laptops, tablets and desktop computers are all are run operating system. The user might have probably heard that most of them. Some examples of the versions of the Windows include Windows 11, Windows 10, 8, 7, Windows Vista and Windows XP. So Apple's Mac OS, next is the Chrome OS, and it is a version of the Linux operating system. So when a user buys a smartphone, most of the smartphones are running in the Android operating system. So that is in case of iPhone, it is running in the Apple's iOS. So both are household names, but the user might not have realized that the operating system is running on their devices. The servers such as those that host the websites the user might have visited. So it may be collecting all the informations from the user. For example, that is using the Facebook or Twitter, whatsoever the account that they have used. So that is all the informations are managed in a server. For that server also, operating system plays a very major role. The next thing is components of operating system. So components of operating system play a key role to make the variety of computer system parts work together. So the operating system components are discussed as below, which are kernel, process execution, interrupt, memory management, multitasking, networking and security. So in the kernel, it provides a basic level of control on all computer peripherals. In the operating system, the kernel is an essential component that loads firstly and remains within the main memory, so that the memory accessibility can be managed for the programs with the RAM, that is the random access memory. It creates the programs to create access from the hardware resources. It resets all operating states of the CPU for the best operation at all times. So second thing is the process execution. So it gives the interface between the hardware as well as the application program, so that the program can connect through the hardware device by simply following the set of procedures and principles configured into the operating system. The program execution mainly includes a process created through the operating system kernel, which uses the memory as well as the different types of other resources. The third thing is the interrupt. In the operating system, interrupts are essential because they give a reliable technique for the operating systems to communicate and react to their surroundings. An interrupt is nothing but one kind of signal between a device as well as a computer program in the computer, which requires the operating systems to live and decide accurately what to do subsequently, that is next by next. So whenever an interrupt signal is received, then the hardware of the computer puts and hold automatically whatever the computer program is running presently, and it keeps the status and runs the computer program which is connected previously with the interrupt. And the fourth thing is the memory management. So functionality of the operating system is nothing but the memory management, which manages the main memory and moves processes backward and forward between the disk and main memory during implementation. This tracks each and every memory position until it is assigned to some process, otherwise it is always open. It verifies how much memory can be allocated to the processes and also makes a decision to know which processes will obtain memory at what time. Whatever memory is unallocated, then it tracks correspondingly to update the status, So memory management can work in three different groups, like memory management of hardware, operating system and application memory management. And the next thing is multitasking. It provides the working of several independent programs on similar computer system. Multitasking in an operating system allows the operator to execute one or more computer tasks at the same time. since many computers can perform one or more tasks at a time, usually this can be done with the help of the time sharing basis, where each and every program uses the time of a computer to execute. The next thing is about the networking. Networking can be defined as when the processor interacts with each other through communication lines. So design of the communication network must be considered routing, connection methods, safety, and the problems of opinion and security. So presently the most of the operating system maintain different hardware, the different networking techniques, hardware and application. That is, this involves that computers that run on different operating system could be included in the general network to share resources like data, computing, printers, scanners, which uses connections of either wired or wireless. The last thing is security. If a computer has numerous individuals to allow the immediate processes on various things, then the process have to be protected from main activities. So the system security mainly depends upon a variety of technologies that work effectively. The current operating systems give an entry to a number of resources which are sustainable to work the software on the system, and also to the external devices like network by means of the kernel. The operating system should be capable of distinguishing between the demands which have to be allowed for progressing and others that don't need to be processed. Additionally, to permit or prohibit the security version, the computer system having the high level of protection also provides auditing options. So this will allow the monitoring the request from the accessibility of resources. And the next thing also can be said as the components of an operating system, that is the user interface. So there is a graphical user interface is the part of the operating system that permits the operator to get the information. So user interface is based upon the text displays the text as well as its commands, which are typed over the command line with the help of a keyboard. The operating systems mainly provide specific user interface for the efficient communication. So main function of the user interface of an application is to get from the operator and also to provide the inputs and outputs to the operator. But the sorts of inputs received from the user interface as well as the output types are offered by the user interface, and also it might change from application to application. So the graphical user interface of an application can be classified into two types. So mainly graphical user interface and the command line user interface. The next thing we're going to see is our booting your computer. So it involves bootloader, boot devices and the boot sequence. So what is the term called booting? So booting is a startup sequence that starts the operating system of a computer when it is turned on. The boot sequence is the initial set of operations that the computer performs when it is switched on. So every computer has a boot sequence. So average computer does not understand the boot sequence, but it is important to know the customizing and troubleshooting the each and every user's computer. So the first thing is the bootloader. So the computer empowered with the central processing unit, that is the CPU, can only execute the code found in the system's memory. So modern operating systems and the application program and the data are stored on a non-volatile memory or the mass storage devices. So when a computer is first powered on, it must initially check or depend on the code, and the data is stored on the non-volatile portions of the system's memory. At the boot time, the operating system is not really loaded and the computer's hardware cannot perform the many complex systems or the system's actions. So a program that starts with the chain reaction which ends with the entire operating system being loaded is known as the bootloader. The term actively came from the early designers imagining that the computer runs, it must have its bootstrapped. So the bootloader's only job is to load other programs for the operating systems to start. So often the multi-stage bootloaders are also used, in which several small programs of increasing the complexity sequentially and the one after the another until the last of them loads the operating system. The boot devices, second thing. So boot devices is the device from which the operating system is loaded. So the operating systems supports the booting from various devices. So this includes local hard disk drive, optical drive, floppy drive, network interface card, or a USB device. So typically the BIOS, that is the basic input and output system, will allow the user to configure a boot order. So if the boot order is set to CD drive or floppy drive or the hard disk drive or the network drive, so then the BIOS, that is the basic input output system, will try to boot from the CD drive first, and then then if it gets failed means it will try to boot from the hard disk drive. So if it too fails means it will boot from floppy disk drive or it will boot from the network drive. And the last thing is the boot sequence. So there is a standard boot sequence that all personal computers use. So first the CPU runs on an instruction in memory for which the BIOS. So that instruction contains a jump instruction that transfers to the BIOS startup program. The program runs on a power on self test, that is POST, to check that devices the computer will rely on functioning properly. Then the BIOS goes through the configured boot sequence until it finds a device that is bootable. Once BIOS has found a bootable device, the BIOS loads the boot sector and transfers the execution of the boot sector. If the boot device is a hard drive, it will be a master boot record, that is MBR, it can be abbreviated. So in MBR, code can checks the partition table for the active partition. So finally, most operating systems, the main function is to load and execute the operating system kernel which country has startup. If there is no active partition or the active partition boot sector is valid, then the MBR, that is a master boot record, may load the secondary bootloader, which will select the partition and load its boot sector, which usually loads the corresponding operating system kernel. Thank you, students.